So today on the podcast, we're experimenting with a new format, listener questions. Over the course of doing this show, I've had tons of people email us. And if you want to email us, by the way, it's podcast@menstherapy.online. They've asked questions based on some of the episodes, some of the topics that we go over, things like divorce, substance abuse, depression, fatherhood, you name it. And I decided, you know what, let's turn these into episodes. So we've been using an AI voice to read the question aloud. We've also removed any identifying information, things like names, place of work, key details, stuff like that. But the gist of the question is there. So we're going to go through and I'm going to answer some of the questions from listeners just like you. And again, if you're interested in asking a question to have featured on the show, that's an email to podcast@menstherapy.online. So without further ado, here's the first question.
I want help, but honestly, I have no idea what kind of therapy I'm even supposed to look for. CBT, somatic, EMDR, psychodynamic. How is a normal person supposed to know where to start? It's so overwhelming.
Okay, this is a great question. So there's kind of a rule of thumb around different types of therapy. You can broadly define them by two different categories. So one are curriculum-based and skills-building therapy. These would be your CBT, your DBT, ACT. A lot of them are acronyms, right? But the idea of these is that they're teaching you different life and emotional skills that maybe you didn't get growing up. And most of us have skill gaps. So it could be things around how to deal with intense emotions. It can be things around how to navigate conflict and have different conversations. It can be things around mindfulness and meditation. There's also things around clarifying what your values are and who you are, what meaning and legacy mean in your life. But what you really need to know is that all these different acronym ones are typically more structured. They're going to have things like homework. They're going to have things like worksheets to do, activities. It's going to be very structured, right? It's very by the book. And that's helpful if you really feel kind of underprepared for life, if you get overwhelmed easily, if you find yourself not knowing what to do or acting out in negative ways, right? Whether that's like a substance abuse or any kind of other addictive pattern, or you kind of project your pain onto the people closest to you. You know, building up these types of skills can be very helpful. What this is not good for is actually a lot of the clients that we see where you already have all the skills, right? You're neurotic. You think too much. You know, you don't need different ways of thinking. You actually need to break some of your thinking patterns. And that's where the second kind of category comes in. That's going to include things like psychodynamic, which is how I personally practice, somatic, which is body-based therapy, motivational interviewing. So these are things that are designed to actually kind of shake your mind out of the default processing network to get you into thinking about things in a different way, or more importantly, feeling things in a different way. So a good rule of thumb is if you need more structure in your life, if you need more containment, if you feel like you're really chaotic and scattered, then some of these cognitive-based activities are great. Cognitive-based therapies are great. But if you feel that you're too structured, you're too rigid, you are too neurotic, then something that is much more free-flowing is typically going to be better for you.
I'm in my early 20s, and I feel like my generation gets told two completely different things at the same time. Be emotionally aware, but also don't be weak. Don't be cringe. It's so fucking confusing. Like, I can't be both. And honestly, it's bullshit that people are even saying that. It just doesn't feel fair. How are young men like me supposed to build an identity?
So I got to say, it is very confusing to be a man right now. I think, just like everything else in our current culture, it is extremely, extremely polarizing. I won't go into much detail because I'm answering your question, but when I first started this company and saying that I wanted to focus on men, either I got applauded or people thought I was starting a cult or starting a, radicalized political organization. It's like you can't even say that you want to work with men without getting extremely canceled and judged. So being a man is crazy. So I think that goes without saying, and you're really talking about that dichotomy of being told to be in your feelings, but don't be weak, or being told to, always believe women, but then also wanting to have your own voice, or being told to, show up and be the nice guy and do whatever people say, but also wanting to be like a leader. I think it's really, really hard. That being said, there is a way through it. And the way through it is by being yourself. And let me unpack that because that's a shitty answer that a lot of therapists give. But there's some truth to that. The idea here is stop listening to what everyone is saying. Stop listening to the influencers. Stop listening to even some of the people in your life and go internal. And I think that's where something like therapy is extremely helpful. Figure out like what matters to you, really, especially as a young man, because you're getting fed so many different things. What feels like an authentic life to you? What do you care about? Especially for Gen Z, the definition of masculinity is dramatically changing. You all are breaking down gender in a way that, as a millennial, I'm just hanging on. And the older generations, they got no idea what you all are doing, right? But you were breaking down gender, and I think masculinity can be more. It can be tender. It can be gentle. It can be caring, but it can also be strong and powerful and being a leader. And it's even more so than it's ever been. It's up to the individual to become a man who they're proud of. So I would start there. Start by thinking about people in your life, whether it's people that authors, even movie stars, even characters in TV shows. They're like, yes, I want to be like that man. Start finding mentors. I think a mentor is critical for young men. Find a man who is doing something that you want to do. And I want to break that down because I think also this is a fault of Gen Z and millennial. We want our mentors to be perfect. We want, the guy who's succeeding everywhere, right? Who is in perfect shape, who has a wonderful family, who, has millions of dollars. And that person rarely exists. And if they do, you probably don't know them. I don't know them. But if you can find a mentor for a category in your life and really follow them, I think that's critical, right? So somebody who has the fitness and physique that you're interested in, somebody who works in a field and career that you're interested in, somebody who treats their spouse and their children in a way that's inspiring to you, and get to know them. Ask them to be your mentor. Ask them to tell you about how they are who they are and some of their life lessons. The older generation, we want to pass down our information to younger generations, and younger generations have to be open to it. So I think that's step one is like, instead of trying to listen to all the toxic bullshit out there, look at what you actually have access to. Look at the men who are around you, who you care about, who care about you, and start there. Start small, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed with everyone online, everyone trying to sell you a product, everyone trying to get you to subscribe to their shit, right? And I'm saying this as somebody who has a podcast you can subscribe to, but like, there's so many people that are angling for your attention and for your mind, really, that it can be really overwhelming. So starting with people that you trust and people that you see in reality, that is very, very critical. The next thing is, that question of like looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking, okay, what can I do that I would be proud of? And fuck whatever everyone else says. If it's not something that's traditionally masculine, who cares? And if it's something that's super masculine, who cares? Do it. Because I think a lot of men, Gen Z men, you grew up in a very frictionless environment and a very easy environment where things like convenience and ease and, disposability were a premium. And the idea here is that you have to bring friction and challenge into your life. So by determining to focus on something that you find not just challenging, but rewarding, you will then start to feel like a man. And the flavor of that doesn't matter. I think that's where your generation is really changing the narrative of like, it doesn't matter if you're like going to war or you want to be the best dog, person that runs a dog daycare ever, right? Like, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it's difficult and that you overcome it and you learn lessons along the way. So I would start there. Find digital mentors, find people that you can connect with, and then do something that you think is really hard and work towards it. Something you can't just do right out the box.
A lot of people in my life love therapy. They're always talking about it, talking about how much it changed their lives. And to be honest, I kind of want that too. But I tried therapy once, and honestly, it just felt like I was talking in circles. Like, I'd go in, we'd talk, I'd leave, and nothing really felt different. So, I guess what I'm wondering is it possible that therapy just isn't for me? Or does it mean I was just in the wrong kind of therapy?
So I'm going to answer this question a little bit sideways. I'll get to it in a moment, but I think the most important thing that I tell everyone who's asking this type of question, basically, how do I know if therapy is working? How do I know if therapy is good for me? Is talk to your therapist about it. And that's how you can tell right out the gate if you have a good therapist or a bad therapist, right? A good therapist can take in feedback, can talk about what they're doing and why they made certain choices. They can justify the way that they're working. And by the way, as a client, you have rights. You have the right to ask them at any point, why did you say that? Or where are we going? Or what are the goals? Or how are you working with me? And we have to have an answer for that. You could ask what's going on underneath the hood. And I encourage you to. A good therapist will not only be able to answer that question, but will be excited to answer that question, because that's really, in my opinion, where the work is. It's actually in the relationship between you and the therapist that you're working with. So the idea here is, if you're able to really pop the hood and go deeper and try to say like, hey, this isn't working for me, here's what I think would work better. And that therapist can either adapt or, refer you out. If they're like, hey, I really can't do X, Y, and Z, then that's great. But I think a lot of therapists, we're just like kind of running our playbook, and without feedback, it's a lot of shooting in the dark. So it's on you and the therapist in a relationship to really define what's working and what's not working for you. You can know you have a bad therapist if you ask them that question and they either A, don't have a good answer, or even worse, B, get defensive and put it back on you and say, well, you're not showing up, or, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. They're shutting down the conversation. That's a therapist that is insecure, that's untrained, that's someone that you probably don't want to be holding your deepest emotional experience. So all I say to that is, like, if you feel like it's not working, ask them, make it a conversation, bring it up first and foremost, see how they respond, treat it as a test. And then if they can't answer it, find somebody else. Or if they can't answer it and you come to the joint conclusion that, yeah, you know what, maybe I should work with somebody else, then they can help guide you through that process.
I spend so much time online, like seriously, all day, every day, that I honestly can't even tell anymore how much of my anxiety is real life and how much of it is just from constantly comparing myself to people on the internet. It gets really bad sometimes, like genuinely crippling. And then it makes me not even want to leave the house, which just makes me feel more depressed because I'm lonely all the time. So, what would you suggest a guy like me do?
So a lot of people are in this situation. A lot of young men, a lot of older guys. Shit, this is not just a Gen Z problem. There are so many Gen X and boomers and millennials, for that matter, that are also trapped in this. I think technology, like I was saying before, has made everything so frictionless that the default existence is what you're talking about here, is being online, being on your phone, being isolated, being disconnected. That's it. I think that's where most people, like over 50% of people, are falling into. So this is a kind of a cultural issue. So what do you do about it? Well, I think if you're online, you're probably engaged in something. There's probably like a hobby or a special interest or a fandom or something you're into. Start there, because as much as we want to say that there's not, the organizations, the fraternal organizations or churches going down, or, how do you meet people? Everyone says that. Like, there's a lot out there. There actually is. Go to a meetup, go to a fan meetup, go to a convention, go to a tournament of a video game that you enjoy, go to a sports game. Start by accessing the in-person version of whatever your online community is about. It's out there. You just have to have the courage and frankly, the balls to do it. If you don't have that, I think a therapist can help you get there. But even better, honestly, is just a friend, just somebody who you can go with, that you can have like kind of a buddy when you're there. So if it goes poorly, you can talk shit, you can laugh about it. If it goes well, great. You're sharing an interest with somebody. But I would definitely start there, is like, just kind of start getting out a little bit. The next thing is, there's so much comparison, and I would look specifically at influencers that, they put forth this perfect version of life. Fitness influencers are probably the easiest version, and then if there's like a negativity to it, if there's like something of like, hey, look at me, you don't have this, do you want this, buy my program? you know, if they're kind of playing on your outrage, if they're playing on your pain, on your loneliness, and then trying to monetize it, stay away from that because that person is not a role model for you. They might be really great at deadlifting, but if they're really trying to like monetize your pain and have an air of superiority about themselves, that person is not to be trusted. And there's a lot of people online that are like that, putting out content specifically to make you feel lesser and then selling you the solution. And once you can see the matrix and see that playbook, those are people that you don't want to connect with. That being said, there's a number of influencers out there, I think we're some of them, that we want you to get better. We want you to come along with us. We're not trying to, be superior or make you feel bad or be insecure, right? We're trying to help you grow and be mentors and be role models that you can look up to. Gravitate towards that. If you're going to be online all day, at least be more discerning about the content that you consume and consume it from people who not just you respect, but who respect you. I think that's extremely critical. Um, Another thing is, the world is changing. A lot more stuff's going to be online. So if you are going to be online, then make that your life in a way, learn how to do AI, right? Learn how to code, do some side hustle, do some drop shipping, right? Learn how to day trade, like if this is the lifestyle that again, as a millennial, I get, but I'm not living. But in another world, I would have been these guys for sure. It's like, then go hard on it, like be serious about it. I think the worst thing is where unfortunately most people are is, being stuck in like doom scrolling and being stuck in just dreaming, but not really executing. So I think it's critical that like if you're gonna resign yourself to being online all the time, great, then go hard, and if you're not, slowly eke out and try to find those in-person meetups or gatherings for stuff you're already interested in. Those are two great ways to start.
I'm very in my head and I can overthink just about anything. But even knowing all that, I still can't seem to move past some stuff from before. So, is there a kind of therapy for guys who already understand themselves, but still can't quite change?
So this is where that second bucket that I talked about before, the more psychodynamic, somatic, which is, body-based motivational interviewing, these really shine. Because what all those focus on, and again, that's how I practice, is with psychodynamic and psychoanalytic, they're very similar in some ways, is you're looking at the unconscious. You're looking at the part of your mind that you're not in control of. Because, yeah, consciously, you're probably pretty smart. You're probably pretty successful. You've made it this far, but there's something unconsciously holding you back. I think a lot of therapists are going to call that something trauma, which I do think is overused. And I think it minimizes some people that have gone through like real significant trauma. I think a better word, something that I use, is conditioning, where you've kind of been trained or conditioned into some shitty habits, things like self-sabotage, low self-esteem, lack of motivation, laziness, procrastination. All those are conditioned and trained. You probably develop those strategies either as survival strategies or they worked, right? And procrastination, as example, it really works until it doesn't. If you're able to coast and do nothing and then just kind of, do your assignment or get your work done in the last 2 hours, like why wouldn't you do that? But then at some point, life gets harder and you never learn how to actually try. So I think it's important to work with somebody that can do depth psychology, right? That can do some of that deeper work and try to get at that unconscious layer. Because it's not as simple as just willpowering and disciplining through it. And I think a lot of men, we're taught that that's the only tool in the toolbox. And that's an important tool. I think that's what makes us men, is that we can just, compartmentalize our feelings and just get shit done. That's really important. And the world needs that, but if you can't turn that off, all those feelings bottle up. And all of a sudden you have this major resistance, like that gets in the way of you actually not only just doing the stuff you need to do, but even knowing what you want to do. So you can pretty easily tell a guy who has never felt anything because he feels dead. If you've never gotten in touch with who you are, what you care about, what your childhood was, what your life story is, you're going to feel pretty dead and you're going to feel pretty numb and nothing's going to really register. So doing some depth psychology, some of that deeper work is really critical for someone that is struggling with that type of issue.
I've done therapy, and it's worked well enough, but I'm looking for something different. I've thought about doing group therapy before, but I don't want to sit there while a bunch of dudes just complain about their lives. I want action. I want insights. Not just some, pity party. Does that even exist?
It sure does. Look at us at menstherapy.online. We have that. But seriously, I think group is the best. Group is my favorite way of practicing for a lot of reasons. The first one is that it is closer to reality. I'll say this to my clients, I say it on the podcast. Individual therapy, even though you may work with somebody incredibly skilled, it's still fake. It's still pretty artificial. And it can only take you so far. I think most guys experiencing diminishing returns in therapy after 2 or 3 years, which if you're new to the process feels like a long time, but in therapy world, it's really not. There are some people that have been clients for, a decade or more. But I think it gets diminishing returns unless you're like a super user, right? Unless you like are a provider yourself, like I am, or you're really into this stuff and you just want to keep digging and digging and digging. There's definitely value there. I'm not going to say it's not valuable, but for the average guy, you get diminishing returns because you figured out, in the beginning, you're learning about your story, you're unpacking your conditioning, you're unpacking your trauma, you're figuring out how you were raised, you're making major changes, you're having the conversation with your spouse or your parents that you never thought you would have. Now you're having it. It's awesome. You're deciding like what kind of life you want to live, what matters to you. Maybe you're finally building a positive habit like exercising or destroying a bad one like drinking. You're really getting a lot out of it. You're doing what I like to call the autobiographical work. You're really figuring out who you are. But once you do that, it then becomes, what the caller asked about. It becomes about action, not about insight. And I think a lot of therapists are not skilled at bringing action. That's why I think coaching works better for that for a lot of guys. But I think group works the best because how you feel about not wanting to be in a pity party with a bunch of guys, so does everybody else in the group. So if you're coming to group week after week and you're just complaining and you're not moving forward, the group is going to tell you. They're going to say, hey, man, like get your shit together. Or, hey, you've been talking about this for months. Are you going to do anything differently? And that kind of accountability with other men is what makes you grow. Adding in that level of challenge, adding in that set of mirrors is really critical. What's also great about group is that, again, once you've kind of healed some of your own pain, you can now be helpful in someone else's life. And being a mentor, being a brother, being somebody who cares about somebody deeply is extremely meaningful. And a lot of my guys, they're not suffering in the way they were when they first started, and they feel more meaningful lives now that they're in group because they're part of something bigger. They belong, and they're able to both give and receive feedback and care and support. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think a good group of guys, everyone all inspiring each other to be better is critical, because everyone can be an expert at something. You have someone who's maybe they're really good at their relationship, but they're struggling in their career. Another person, vice versa. And those two guys can learn from each other and they can really grow up and level up together. And that is a cool thing. That's the thing that I think we're lacking, especially in Western American culture. We don't have those types of fraternal connections. We don't have, male connection without competition. And the therapy group can be that and is that for a lot of guys. So check out group. I think it's where the change really happens. And I think it is the long-term support structure that a lot of guys are missing and that everyone needs. You're not weak for needing a support structure. Like we need each other. It takes a village. And a men's group is a great opportunity to get that.
Dating feels impossible right now. I'm on all the apps, and I'm even getting responses. But after like 1 or 2 conversations, I just get ghosted, and I honestly don't get it. I've been getting advice on Reddit lately. Things like communicate, be vulnerable, be intentional. Is that right? Because it also feels like one wrong move, and I'm done. Seriously, I see a lot of guys going through the same thing, and they're just opting out. It's too much. And dating kind of makes me feel like a bad guy.
Yeah. Dating sucks right now. Dating is horrible. I have a number of clients that are currently dating of every generation, and it sucks. It sucks. So, I think it's always important to look at the motivations, just like we were talking about some of these influencers in the previous question. But, these dating apps, they want to keep you on the app. They don't want you to leave the app. So there's a lot of things in place where they are setting you up with people that maybe initially give you attention and then disappear. They're trying to monetize things like super likes or the flowers from Hinge or all that kind of shit. Like they want to keep you engaged. If you succeed at a dating app, if you meet somebody and delete the app, the company has lost. So just there, the business model doesn't make any sense. So dating apps, I think, are the shittiest way to meet people, and it's the norm. So what do you do about that? Well, the first thing is the gamesmanship. You do need some of it. I'm not going to lie. You need some of it. You need to be a leader. You need to be intentional. You need to set the frame. Of course, we can talk about that in therapy. I help a lot of guys, learn how to date. But the main thing here is I think a lot of the advice that women give you, which is be vulnerable, be open, show your feelings, actually turns a lot of women off in the beginning of a relationship. Down the line, yes, women want your emotions. They want you to be honest. They want you to be open. They want you to share all of you. But in the beginning, it's a turn off. And I think a lot of guys make that mistake, especially in Gen Z. I see that, you wear your hearts on your sleeve, which is a beautiful thing. And even as, how liberal and woke women want to be, I think they sometimes find that pretty gross. They still want kind of a traditional leader and an executor in their life. So I'd encourage in the beginning is like set the frame, set the plan, set the tone, right? Be in charge in the beginning. That creates initial attraction. Don't be always available and make it part of your life instead of being your life. I think a lot of guys are coming to dating with a lot of desperation, and women can smell that a mile away. And it makes you feel low value to them. Be a guy, again, you don't have to be a player, but have other shit going on. If dating is not working, it probably means other parts of your life are not working either. So if you find dating is like, you should have a life that you want to bring somebody into first, rather than waiting to make a life when you date somebody, So if dating's not working, look at your life honestly. Like, are you out of shape? Great. Go to the gym. Is your career stalled? Great. Try to move up or change careers. Do you feel like you're not that interesting? Okay. Get some hobbies and some interests. Do you feel uneducated? Okay. Learn something, right? Make yourself more desirable. And that's what women are going to be attracted to. It doesn't matter what you're texting or what your pictures look like. If you have an empty life or you're ready to make your life all about that person that you're dating, it's not going to work. So you have to have a good life first and then bring someone into it. I think that's probably the number one misconception around dating. Another thing is, again, this is rare these days, but if you're doing that thing of making your life better and you're going to places, you're taking classes, you're volunteering, you're getting involved, you're working up in your job, like meet people in person, meet people that share your interests. Because shit, the dating apps, it's like 95% physical. And like, okay, maybe you can list a little bit of stuff you're interested in, but you can't really know what a person is like, and you don't get a sense of who they are until a long time. But if you're, say you get really into I don't know, wilderness first aid, and you're going to classes and they're co-ed, and you meet someone there, okay, someone you've met there, you already share an interest, you probably share some values, you share the same location because you both made it to the class. Like you're already starting to check a bunch of boxes, and you can form a stronger relationship because of that. So I think, or I don't know, I hope that we're seeing the end or the death of some of these apps and the return to in-person dating. But I think you can start that and just start doing things that you care about, that there are people that you might be interested in, and talk to them. Again, it's a lot harder, but who you're going to meet are already going to be checking a lot of those boxes, and they're probably going to be a better fit and probably a stronger relationship down the line.
I read this thing the other day about the difference between how men and women talk to their friends. And it said women talk to each other about themselves, about life. But men just kind of talk side by side, not even looking at each other, talking about sports and shit. And honestly, it really got me down, because I do want close friendships with other men. But it made me realize that basically all of my friendships are built around jokes, gaming, sports, sending stupid memes. So, how do you actually deepen male friendship without making it super weird?
So what I want to say is the way that men connect, which is true. I mean, studies show this. It's a side by side. It's connecting through a third party, through an object, right? Sports or an activity or a hobby or something. That is how we connect typically. And it's not a bad thing, I think a lot of the spin of reach and psychology has made this way of connecting feel less than, the female way of connecting, which, yeah, is more communal, right? They show studies where men sit side by side and women sit in circles. But it doesn't mean that one is better or worse, that they're just different. And what I find with a lot of guys is we get a lot out of those side by side relationships to begin with. We feel connected, we feel dependent on. But I think the main thing that a lot of Gen Z men are lacking is you can talk about a shared thing, again, like a sport, a hobby, or whatever, but you rarely do them together. So I would challenge you. It's like, okay, if you're both going to talk about, dirt bikes, but never actually ride together. Start there. Do the thing that you're talking about, right? If you're just talking about sports games, right, and you each watch the game separately and then talk about it, like go over each other's house and like watch the game together, right? That's not weird. That's just bro time. Right? Go to a bar, go to Buffalo Wild Wings, right? Like start to move it a little bit in that realm where you are starting to hang out. Because what I see from, my friendships, from the guys I work with, from the, hikes and things that we do is that if once you go through something with a guy, then afterwards, say you go out to lunch or you grab a couple of drinks or whatever afterwards, then the honesty and probably what you're looking for, that more emotionally vulnerable, intimate connection comes out. But you have to kind of go through the activity. And that's a very evolutionary thing, right? You're trying to vet, like, is this guy part of the team? Is he valuable to me? Is he useful? Right? There's a very biological bonding of like, can we survive through difficulty and challenge together? Can we overcome things together? And when we do, we feel bonded with other men. If we can, accomplish a challenge together, then we feel that we've won. We're a team, and then there's room for more emotional connection. I think that's critical. Another thing is that if you are brave enough, and again, therapy can help you with this, men's group can really help you with this. If you're brave enough to take the conversation away from that third party thing, oftentimes guys are just going to follow because so many guys are lonely. So many guys are looking for openings. And if you just lead it and you just start, usually guys are able to come to the table and we want to come to the table. But oftentimes other guys are way too afraid. If you're feeling that way, that you wish you had deeper connections with your male friends, they might be feeling the same way too. But it just takes one of you to rip the Band-Aid off and make it happen. So I would encourage you just try, or even, I had someone on my podcast say it the other day is like, have a conversation about another topic, like if you're just talking only about lifting, expand out, talk about your relationships, talk about, even talk about sports, talk about your cars. Like once you start talking about more than one thing, then you might have a friend and you just keep adding one more thing. And over time it becomes something that is close. I think, in the meantime, and as a practice round, things like men's groups can be really helpful because they can help you practice some of these conversational skills. And, all the guys are going there with the intention to be more open and be more vulnerable. So I think that's critical. And for a lot of men, that becomes their emotional support structure. But, ideally you're doing it in your life because men's groups are great. I run them. I'm in them. They're amazing. And like I've said 100 times before, they're like a little bit fake, right? They're a little bit artificial. So the idea that you can build skills in men's groups, build connection, and then bring it into your friends, into your family, and into your community, because that's where the real change happens. So I would encourage you, take the risk. You're probably not alone. I think especially Gen Z men, you all are way more in touch with your emotions than, even my generation, millennials, and we were called the softies when we were growing up. So you guys have it. It's just about taking that step, that risk, and making it happen.